Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied hands, mostly Quindy, sometimes John, and occasionally Justin. Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. This week is, it's moving. This week is moving. We're almost to May. Even the people in, Wisconsin should be getting decent weather soon. I speak as a past Wisconsinite. Hello, hello. Yay. Look, we have Dargan on the neck. Oh boy, and the bottom of the head doesn't really line up with the actual neck. So that's a little bit awkward, dragon. So if I do green work on this dragon, I may consider fixing that. And what I mean by that is when I look at the kind of the crocodile type scaling on the underside of the neck, I'd like that. If I'm gonna paint that a different color, I'd like it to kind of come down here into the neck here, but it doesn't really. So I might want to kind of cut off these scales and kind of bring these scales over into this area a little bit. Just a little bit more, maybe just a little bit right here. That's just me nitpicking. Like anybody's gonna look under the head, right? Yeah, just nitpicks, picking nits. This morning we are going to work on the horns. I have a big piece of bubble wrap, as you can see, big enough to hold the dragon because the dragon is very spiny and uncomfortable. Yeah, 34 today in Milwaukee. Yeah, right. But soon, in May, there is the possibility, Turgeon, of you guys finally getting decent weather. There's also the possibility of snow. I've seen both happen in my time living in Wisconsin. So, it's just a lottery. This is why I don't live in Wisconsin anymore. It's definitely been a cold spring, though. It's been cold out here, too. We're down in the lower 60s for the next couple of days, which probably sounds like heaven to you. Up. Yeah. Yeah, Violent Ray. Congrats and awesome at Adepticon, as always. Happy subiversary. Double subiversary. Happy double subiversary. There you go. But yes. I saw a lot of people at Adepticon, but yes, it's good seeing everyone. That's why we go to cons. Go to cons to see peeps. 80 degrees 3 days ago, huh? Now it's in the mid 40s. Yeah. Cold spell coming through here too in mid California. So totally, but I'm waiting because then it'll go up to the 70s, and that's my favorite weather is when it's 70 to 80. In the 80s, I just want to go out and bask in the heat. And happy birthday. Happy sub a day and happy birthday. So let's see here. We want horns. Oh no, I forgot my palette. Wow, that's happened. It snowed here this morning and you cried. I'm sorry, Babble. Hold on, I'm going to grab my palette real quick. Palette goes in the dish drainer, and I made prime rib soup last night, so my big soup pot was sitting in the dish drainer, and it had hidden my palette, so that is why I forgot it. At least I have a reason instead of my normal I just forgot it reason. 78 2 days ago. Yeah, it's been very erratic spring, but that's all right. We're getting there. We're getting to the warm. Okay, dragon, you look odd naked, but I'm going to start on at least getting these horns done. And to do that, we need our... did I take that in the other room? No. There it is. Yay! I was going to say we need our gnawed bone. So we want these horns to be the same color as the teeth and the big horns here. So we want to start with a very dark color and then bring it up through mixing russet brown with gnawed bone and then up to gnawed bone. We've got lots of little ridges to deal with here, so we will be doing some texture on those. I'm going to get closer and I'm going to focus. Let's see here. I moved my camera up. There, that should be good. Chin up, dragon, chin up. And I'm going to move the wing out of the way for now. And we will start mixing some colors. There. All right. Chin up, dragon. Putting dragon safely on the bubble wrap while we mix. Got some russet brown, which is just a good warm brown to mix with these off bone colors. Because it's a yellowish brown to begin with, when you're dealing with a kind of a yellowed bone or ivory, this is just a good brown to have to create a shadow with. Hello, booking kitties. Good morning. We're painting horns today, and on the end of these horns, I am going to I'm going to cap them off with gold, as if she's got like gold jewelry caps on her horns, because I think that'd be fun. So first of all, though, everything needs to be painted walnut. And then we need to bring that up. But yeah, otherwise, waiting for it to get warmer. We go down, actually, we're going down to colder this weekend. We're going down to Monterey, Pacific Grove, Carmel region, to hopefully figure out a place we're going to get married, and to talk to our favorite restaurant about renting out a small room or something for reception. Which really means tasty dinner. Reception equals tasty dinner. So hopefully our errand will be successful. Yes, the dragon likes her bling. Plus I need to find a place to stay down there. That'll take a puppy just in case. Because, you know, if we get married, we can't just leave our puppy at home. The puppy needs to come with. So I'm going to do one drop of, we're going to go up to this. I'm going to do essentially a reverse thing. Remember how I swap? So we're going to start with 4 drops of this and 1 drop of the gnawed bone. And then we're going to do 4 drops of the gnawed bone and 1 drop of the russet brown. And by inverting these things, we get a nice balanced progression. Sometimes I'll go 3 to 1 instead, and 1 to 3. It depends on the characteristics of the paint. Like, you could start with a 3-1, 1-3, and then kind of judge how well it's working, and then, you know, scale up if you want a little bit more difference. Depends really on how different you want things to be. And then I'm going to do these at least 5 to 2 or 4 to 1. Except for the initial base coat, which is a 5 to 1. And I'm going to mix these up and see how they look. So that's a good color. Essentially, the adding the gnawed bone to the russet brown gives it a little bit more coverage because we just added a color with a lot of white. And then we've got a nice kind of mid-tone, a very darkened bone color. This is supposed to be a pretty old dragon, so going kind of dark and more aged looking with some of her claws and teeth and bone bits is good. Hello, Twistoma. Oh, I haven't checked in on the Kickstarter. I will have to check in on Bone 6. Remember, when this Kickstarter ends, we will be done painting this dragon for the time being. I may, from time to time, if I'm in the mood, I may text Quindy and or message Quindy and tell her we're doing a dragon episode. So you may see the dragon pop in here and there if I'm in a dragon painting mood. Hello, Cursed. So, but after this, we'll go back to our normal rotation. I wanted to check on the Kickstarter. Let's go. Alrighty, where are we? Oh, wow. Did we just make a goal? No, we made it. Oh, yeah, we made it at 260. So we got the first part of Lost Tombs. No, we're going back to our normal rotation. Kodiak, so I'm probably just going to start with the Centaur and just go down the line. So we'll go back to painting the Appaloosa Centaur. And then Hair Folk, and then Kitty Paladin, and then Madame Delia, and then the Bust, and then our Bones USA Sorceress. So yeah, so we have 30k to the Fire Newts. And Reaper looks like it's gonna. This is its goal. This is what it's aiming for. So yeah. So we'll see how we do. I think we only have. Do we have 3 days left? I think. Yeah, 3 days. So now, if it's gonna pick up, right about today and tomorrow is when it should start to pick up. Yeah, good idea, Quindy. Yeah, write down Centaur for Monday. I don't remember where we originally stopped, so I'm just gonna go back to Centaur. And then from time to time, Quindy, I will probably go back and revisit Dragon, because I was thinking about it and I was like, well, I'm not going to paint the whole dragon all in one go, because that'd be just freaking boring. And it would only appeal to a small section of the audience. But I can toss Dragon in every once in a while. And if I do it that way, then new people who have never seen Dragon will get, a chance to ask questions and do stuff. Oh, they did put in previews for After the Dragon, just in case. Okay. Well, that's cool. All right, I'm going to stop here for now. I'm going to grab my dragon. The dragon has a handle. The dragon is very spiny, so you need a nice, comfortable dragon holding handle. So now the dragon has a comfortable bubble wrap coat. And she will smile at you while I base coat her horns with a brush that I can actually base coat her horns with. Let's see. Let's use Big Brush. Yeah, no problem, Quindy. Yeah, I figured I'd give it a little bit. She really is smiley. So I'm going to use Giganto Brush, my number 3 round, because it'll cover the surface fast for this initial base coat. It also still has a really good tip, so because it's a Klinsky, so I can get it to delicately paint around the horns. At the root where I need it not to go over onto the scales. But I can be a little messy when I get back here because I haven't even painted over that part yet. So when you use a nice big brush, and you could use a flat for this too, because these horns are pretty flat. I don't have to use a round. But I'm still trying to break in this big, huge brush a bit. And we will go over the part that I'm going to make gold as well. So working with a brush, if you feel like, if you're like me and you kind of feel like there is a brush breaking in period, working with a brush just gently on some base coating can help to break it in while it still might be... I definitely like to break mine in before I start doing really fine detail with them. Some people can use a fresh brush right out the gate and not really see a difference, but I definitely notice a difference in what I can do with a brush as I get used to it. Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's Walnut Brown Kodiak. It's one of the most useful colors in all of MSP. It's a 9136. If you don't have it, get it. It has excellent coverage. It's a really super dark brown, almost black. It's a great liner color. It's a great color to add into other colors to create a shadow. If you want a more natural shadow and not just a darker version of like the color you were originally working with. I love it for undercoating horns and teeth and actually a great many things. Dark leather, I'll often start with it on and then bring it up with other dark browns. Because it is like just a little bit off of black itself, it just is a really good starter for that. It's also a great starter for dark brunette hair for the same reason. I use walnut a lot. Walnut was one of possibly the most popular color in the old Pro Paint. And it's, I think, maybe one of the only, there's a couple others that are close, but it's one of the only MSP colors that has remained in the line all the way along the line. I think it may be the only color, other than obviously black and white, which don't change much, but as far as actual light colors, walnut has been in the line since I first released it as 9136, and it has it was in Pro Paint, it was in the new Pro Paint. It's always been in production with Reaper because it's always been one of the most popular colors. Got little bits that we touch up there. They are having issues with importing Babel because there is a fish and wildlife clause about importing Kolinsky sable that requires like a certain level of paperwork, because I know other Kolinsky sable companies are importing, at least they were. So unless something weird has changed, I'm not sure why Rosemary is having problems, but they are. So that said, I use DaVinci Maestro and Raphael are my two favorites. Yes, and as pointed out by Paladin65 there, because walnut is so dark, if it's the only near black color on your model, it will read successfully as a black. So like if nothing else on this dragon is painted this color or anything close to this dark, this color would read as black. Yeah, I'm not sure about the whole thing. There was an actual Kolinsky shortage when this ordinance first went into effect, where nobody could get their brushes in. But it was explained to me that there's just some hoops to jump through, and brushes began appearing in the States again. This was several years ago that this first popped up. James Gurney even posted about it on his blog. James Gurney being the painter who did and author who did Dinotopia, the Dinotopia books, and who also has produced probably one of the best books on color and painting in the world. It's called Color and Light. And it's one of the two books that I pretty much recommend out the gate if you want to learn to think about color and light and lighting on your figures. But yeah, I use weird. Interesting. Yep. Yeah, I'm not sure what the dealio is. Maybe DaVinci and the other companies are pulling a fast one to get past that law. I have no idea. No idea, but whatever the case. As mentioned, I am this is a Raphael. I ordered it off of Amazon. I also have been playing around with the Escoda Optimo, which is a Spanish brush, although it's not one of my favorites, but I'm giving it a chance for this shorter stockier series. And my all-time favorite brush, period, no questions asked, is the DaVinci Maestro Series 10 Size 1, which I have used for over 20 years for all of my competition painting and continue to do so. Yes, it may be that Rosemary and Company is being, maybe they're not a huge company and the owners are just like against like jumping through those hoops, and they're just like, this shouldn't even exist and we're not going to jump through the hoops, so we're just going to try to politically pressure the U.S. into dropping this stupid rule. It could be. I have no idea. Not my circus. I will start getting really, really upset if I can't get any Kalinskis, although I do have a back stock. I try to pick up extra brushes whenever I can, because you just never know. But yeah, I have no idea. Good morning, War Shadow. But yeah, there's no way to know exactly what's going on, so we will just have to wait and see for those who are fans of rosemary brushes. Yeah, 20 brushes. That should keep you going for a while, though, Violent Ray. Like, 20 Kalinsky sables should last you 20 years. Like, seriously. Unless you paint like me, if you're like an everyday painter, then you're going to go through brushes faster. But even when I was painting every day, like full-time every day, like 40 hours a week, which I don't now because a lot of my job is writing and shooting video and stuff. Even then, my brushes lasted like 6 months of heavy use before they started to die. So if you got 20 brushes, you should be fine. Like, don't worry about it. And if your brushes are wearing faster, then I would try to figure out why. Because a good Kalinsky literally should last you years. All right, we've got our base coat on, which makes our dragon look much more interesting. We're going to have to wait for that to dry. Although, yeah, this horn still has certain wet spots. And I've got little specks showing through, too. I hate that. Touching up my little specks. Because you're always, with things, textured things like this, you're just always going to miss some spots. They don't outlast you because you use them wrong. That's a shame, Steph and Mac, because they really save you a lot of money if you learn to use them right. Plus, you can just do great things with them. If you find that you damage your brushes a lot and go through them quickly and you're paying for very expensive brushes, I would back off and get a good synthetic and utilize that and maybe work on like the things that are wrecking your brushes. Because yeah, you can go through a lot of money that way. If your synthetics are lasting that long, I'm impressed, Curse. As we have been looking at and using this synthetic, and we're up to about 4.25 hours on it now. It's still holding up decently. Like, it's got a decent, you can see the tip just barely starting to go over, but it's really not doing badly. But I'm impressed if you can make your brushes last month painting 5 days a week. And they're synth. Yeah, you'll wreck the tips if you go too much, and you need to use thinner paint, Stefan, as well, ideally. But yeah, I mean, it's... If you find yourself going through Kalinskys like that, definitely take a step back and really analyze what you're doing with them. because they're not if you're really an impatient painter and you're really rough on brushes, you might get better mileage off of a synthetic than you will off of a Kolinsky. You won't waste quite as much money. Last about a year, huh, Nara? Well, we'll see. Well, for me to recommend, I'd have to know what you have, Kodiak. That's the problem, really. This is the problem with me, like, recommending a paint. Like, it's like, oh, I've already got that one. Oh, I've already got that one. I mean, I do a lot of, if you're on my Patreon, I do, I think I did a most useful browns PDF. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I need to look at that. I was planning to do a most useful browns PDF. Let me grab a sticky note and make a note. But I thought I did. Do you guys know, any of you who are my patrons? I mean, a lot of things I'm just going to bring up Kodiak as I paint. Because like with this model, I pointed out ultramarine shadow, definitely one of our most beautiful blues. Dragon green, highest coverage medium green that we've got, that has still is pretty bright. And brighter colors tend to have less coverage, just the way the pigment works. So like these two, you know, obviously right now I've just pointed out how useful russet brown is. And walnut, you know, I could go on and on because I mean, any color I reach for is going to have a lot of use. I keep about 100 or so in the drawer next to me that are my most used or most useful colors. But it also depends as far as what's most useful for you, Kodiak. It depends on also what your goals are. Like, are you a mixer, right? Or are you looking for triads, right? If you mix, honestly, I used to do my base coating with synthetics, Stephen Mac, and then I would just whip out the Kolinskis for detail. Over time, as I got to take better care of my brushes, I started using the Kolinskis for everything, but I have a very light touch. I don't have any of the new colors, so I'm not sure on the new colors in the Kickstarter. Okay. Well, there is a brown pentad because I just posted it, Grey Wolf. It's the leather brown pentad. I will make a note for most useful browns. I meant to do that. But I may have gotten rolled over. Yes, the light leather colors is a good one. Yeah. Valendar, 30 months. That's insane. Very cool. Thank you. But yeah, so essentially, Kodiak, if you really are like, what the best way to ask that question about, hey, any colors you recommend, is to think about what you've been painting recently, and like, did you like were you missing anything? Were you like, I wish I had a color X. I wish I had a brighter red. I wish I had a whatever. You know, if you've been painting a lot of, let's move to a smaller brush. And I'm like, this is too big of a brush. But if you've been painting a lot of a particular color, like you've been using a lot of reds or you've been using a lot of blues, but you're like, well, I've got these blues, but I'm looking for different blues, or I'm looking for lighter greens, or I'm looking for what. So if you frame your question far more specifically, then we'll be able to answer you more effectively. I just did a PDF on a light leather pentad pendrake. The same kind of progression I used on the Knoll, on our Knoll Pirate, who now is just a Knoll something or other. I noticed in the Bones USA ranges. Do you remember this guy? Yeah. This guy with his cool bandolier. So lighter colored leathers and some alternative colors for them. All right, so let's get to texturing these horns. Yeah, getting just a big old cheap flat, honestly. If you paint a lot of large models like dragons, Getting just like a normal artist's flat, you can see how big this is just compared to my fingers. It's a size 8. Although, again, brush sizes vary. But this size would be really good. I could have used this on the horns and on the dragon. So depending on how big you do, like get a big flat and a big filbert. They really help. Yeah, well then you're good, Stephen Mac. Just get as big as, I mean, it's always use as big a brush as you can get away with and still have control. I'm just checking my paint consistency on this mixture of 4 russet brown and 1 gnawed bone. So this may look like it would take a while, but actually if you just take your colors and you just get in and start making some little lines. There we go. So you can see I'm making some little dashes, right? And that's to give us just like texture, kind of like the teeth. There's also some striations. You can see them now on these dark horns. Hey, Shadow Raven. Ed would probably be able to use an Ed brush on this dragon and still have it come out looking way too good for what he used, but that is not what my happy spot is, so. All right, so I've got some striations here on the horns, and I'm going to mark them a little bit. So I can just do that on the top of these. I can go at it like that way. So a slightly different texture than over here, which isn't like terribly consistent, but these horns are also shaped differently. So I'm like, well, I could do that. So I'm going to try it. We'll just do lines this way on these big horns. Let's see what I can do to give it a little bit of a different texture. Just goes to show you don't have to stick to the other texture. You can go a little bit different if you'd like to on different areas of the dragon. That's what I deal in, Stephen Mac. Knowledge, painting knowledge, free on Twitch. Just tune into the Reaper stream with Anne. I have decades of painting experience and self-analysis of why, not just what, but why. And I enjoy troubleshooting. Myself and other people. So as you can see, we've got a bit of texture going on. It's not just a band of color, it's got some interruptions in it. So that makes everything a little bit more easy. Yeah, and no stuff. Yep, that's a long time ago. Long time ago, Paladin. Still some good stuff on there, though. Jennifer doesn't teach anymore, so if you've got that video, treasure it. I asked her why she wouldn't do a Patreon, but she's just not comfortable with video. There we go. So we're getting that highlight there. Yeah. Exactly, Babel. I always got frustrated with painters who were just like, watch me and now do it. When, you know, that's kind of what my art school handed me. And I really, you know, I was not a fan. Let's just say I was not a fan. So since I have an analytical mind as well as an artsy mind, when I began teaching, I devoted myself to figuring out the why so that I could provide that along with. Because I figure if I'm doing it, that's not enough reason. That's not a good enough reason. And I need to be able to tell you why it works. I need to Mythbusters it and tell you why it works, not just that it works. All right, so now we're going to get in trouble because the dragon is huge and I need to get to a good angle to paint the head. So I'm probably going to need to get back into focus. 1 second while we try to focus on dragon head. It's a good thing my cam can go like, oh, we've made some white spots too. See those white spots? We need to touch those up. There will always be white spots, like when you've got this much texture on a model. Social media stretch goal is up. Is it cute? If it's cute, I'll look at it. Oh, I also need more walnut. Sorry, guys. 1 second. I used up a lot of my walnut base coating these horns, and then I thinned it because I wanted to use it for lining and touch-ups, but it's not good to touch up when I didn't cover up all the primer. So 1 second while I juice up my walnut with some more paint. Bubble wrap is the best because if it's a spiny model especially, it spares your hands, but because it's completely non-abrasive and it puts an air cushion between you and the model, it means that you're much less likely to rub paint off. So for big models, I always do this. Small models, I'm okay mounting on something, but I like to be able to hold a model at the right angle comfortably to paint it effectively. So there we go. Now I can come back in and fix those little bits because I have a much more opaque. Boop. And of course these dots look huge up on the camera here, but they're much smaller in person. There. And you've got another one over here and one here. But yeah, painting this big of a dragon, you can see why I waited till the end to put the head on, because it's very difficult to, I could raise this up just a little. My camera will actually raise up quite nicely. There we go, it's a little better. Now we can get a little bit more in focus. 1 second. This is what I love, manual focus, man. Love it. Oh, and I'm throwing things on the floor again. Oh well. It is what it is. My desk is small and there are many big things on it. New rust monsters, nice. Yeah, I could see why you thought the original one was too soft. Hopefully they'll be small enough to be done in USA. All right, so now I need to get to a good angle, a comfortable angle to do the texture that I was doing before. So I'm gonna turn him around and yeah, there's my texture, but I need to be going this direction. So I really need to tilt him this way. There we go. Much better. This is of course the problem with attaching the head, is that now I have a whole dragon to figure out how to orient. There we go. But yeah, painting big minis can be hard on you. I mean, this is why I'm glad dragons aren't metal anymore, because then they just hurt your hands to even hold for any length of time. Got a little bit too much paint on my brush there. Whenever you get big blobby lines and you don't get thin, elegant lines, that means you've got too much paint on your brush, usually, if you're using a good brush. I'm going to bring in a little bit more of my dark there where I got a little overzealous. Ooh, a special announcement. So then it's that announcement. There's no Alpaca Nation today, Quindy? because that's half hour after I usually end, right? Or am I wrong? Yeah, no, that should be. Right, no Luca. Okay. Oh, it's RPG stream day. So probably, like, doing these horns isn't going to take all that long, considering I'm texturing the whole thing. It's just, like, getting the right angle to hold the brush so that you can just go quickly. Because doing a bunch of little dashes, especially when you don't have to be that precise with them yet, isn't too bad. So here, we've got... keep getting off of... there we go. Keep getting off camera because I'm trying to hold a tiny dragon under a... or a huge dragon under a tiny lamp. Here we go. I assume it's the role-playing game session with the artists. Am I right? Oh, okay. No, it's different. Okay. So he's running a beta RPG from the studio. It should be today, tomorrow, and Friday. Well, that's cool. It's the same thing I do with the teeth, Agent Marvel. Horns also have a texture because they're also growing out from the head. So having those little like lines, like those ridges, just like fingernails, I mean, is pretty much how I choose to do my horns if I'm going to do texture on them. Trying to get into a comfortable position here, and it is a challenge with this big dragon. I wish that it was more pieces so that I could have just attached like the upper torso. Although you can see, I hope, that the bubble wrap keeps me from... Like, if I was handling this dragon at this point, it would be so... Like, all the primer would be rubbing off. I need to rinse my brush. So when your brush gets a lot of paint in it, that's when you should stop and rinse it. No, I never do that, Stephen Mac. I always paint the wings separately because if you want to do any detail whatsoever on the wings, you've got to be able to hold them decently. Got to be able to like get a good angle on them and hold them steady. And if they're attached to the dragon, that's just not happening for me. You get a better result if you take your time and you know, you can always do some putty work and then paint over it. Green stuff is totally paintable. So, in my mind, there's really no reason not to... Let's see here. I want to make sure I'm in focus. Not to paint first and put together later. All right, now, kind of got those horns etched in, so let us, and then there's the bottom parts that we haven't touched. All right, so now I can go back to a little bit more of a better position here. And I'll just get closer there. Yeah, if you're more of a builder, then that makes sense why you'd be impatient about the painting. I mean, I know a lot of people like that. They just really prefer the build, and they just want to put just enough paint on the model to make it look okay in the case, and that's it. And I get that. That's totally cool. That's why I always say it's about your goals. Like, what are your goals as a hobby? But that said, Stephen Mack, then I'm going to double down on my suggestion that you like go if you're going to be that rough on your brushes, don't use Kolinsky's. At that point, you're not really using them for what they're meant to do, and that's why you're going through them so fast. And if you get some Kolinsky's, then I would just really sit on them and use them just for the fine details. Use them for like the eyes and the teeth and stuff. If you do that, then, you know, try to slow down. I mean, it's all up to you. Nobody's going to force you into a chair and tell you to take your time. You have to decide that it's worth it. Maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but that's what the decision that each of us has to make is, you know, how much time do I want to spend on this model? How much is it worth to me? Oh, no. I rinse all the time, Babel. I don't think you can rinse too often. Like, I've been known to use one brush full of paint and then rinse and reload. Sometimes I'll do 2 or 3 brushfuls of paint and then rinse and reload, but at that point, the paint is inevitably creeping up my brush, and I'm like, nope, too much. Yeah, well, and better is up to you, you know, like, if you want. So I don't want to pressure anybody into, like, chasing the hobby the way I do, right? It's all of us, our own experience with the hobby is what's rewarding. So this paint is thinner, and you can see how I can get much thinner lines with it with this brush, see? So the thicker the paint, the bigger the line, the thinner the paint, the less paint on the brush, the more delicate the line. When you have really thin paint, you can take most of the paint off of your brush and still be able to draw these lines. With thicker paint, the paint will resist coming off the brush. Well, you may have it too wet, Babel, but you always want to rinse it. And then in my case, I squeeze it out in my hand. So I'm rotating it and I'm just going to squeeze it out. That makes it form a perfect point. Then I load it up. So I've got some water still in the brush. Obviously it's holding together. You can see it kind of shining in there. Then I load it up, but I don't load it up very much. Then I dab it off on the palette until it once again makes a perfect point and doesn't have too much of a paint load. I can hardly see the paint in there. And then I should be able to do my lines. So you can keep the brush too wet. And since I have that water in my brush, I'm going to reload instead of rinsing it out right away. Essentially, the thicker my paint, the more likely I am to like rinse and reload after every application of paint. As I get thinner, I have a lot less paint on my brush at any given point, and you can see there that the paint is only about halfway up the brush. So I feel like I can still have good control. But when I start to see thicker lines, that usually means that I've gotten too much paint built up in my brush, and I need to go back and rinse it out and reload. So it really is how much paint is in your brush, how thin is the paint in your brush, how far up the brush is your paint, how much have you unloaded your brush. You can definitely have too much fluid in your brush. If you can't do controlled lines like this, then you've got a lot of fluid in your brush. But if you have just enough, just a tiny bit of paint in your brush, but it's very thin, you'll be able to pull off stuff like this once you have the brush control. But out of all of this, I find brush control is the easiest thing to build. Then getting the habits of how to load and unload your brush is kind of key. Then you probably need to clean your brushes a little better or rinse them more often, Johnny. If you, I've been using this brush. This is a synthetic. And we've been using it about 3¼ hours, I think, or three and three. Yeah, maybe it's about 3 and 3.5 hours at this point now, or 4. It's around there. We used it for about an hour last time. So actually, I guess it's 4.25. So it's still really good. It's still really, really clean. It still comes to a really good point. So about 4.25 hours. But the key here is only dipping a little bit of your brush into the paint. Like if I'm going to load up this brush, I'm only going to dip that much paint. So if you've got brushes that are clogging up and getting stiff and gross, then the paint is getting up here by the metal part, which is called the ferrule. And you should never see that. If I'm painting, and while you paint, the paint will naturally travel up. You can see it kind of capillary actioning here into the bristles. So when you see that, when it starts getting close to the ferrule is when you want to stop and rinse it out. It'll happen as you paint. The pressure will work it up through the bristles. So just rinse more often, Johnny. Kind of practice. Maybe even set a timer on your phone so that, it goes off every 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. And I find more rinsing is better than less. Yeah, that's probably going to work. If you're putting it on really roughly, that's going to work the paint way up through here. At that point, I would consider getting, using a big synthetic, like a big artist brush, like I was showing people earlier. You can kind of see with my fingers the size of it. These, it's just a cheapo. But they'll take that abuse a little bit better. You don't really need a good brush for that, for base coating. That's what it comes down to. You do if you're going to be base coating really tiny areas like eyes and teeth, but that's when you can switch to a good brush. If you're going to use a good sable, the more gentle you can be with it, the better. The lighter touch you develop, the better. In my experience, again, it's always in my experience. And, other people will disagree with me. Other very, very good painters will disagree with me. It's just everybody's their own in this hobby. We all have our own thing going on. So never consider what you're doing wrong. What you're doing is always right for you. But sometimes you could try to switch up the tool if it's not working so well for you. The tool or the method. Yep, brush cleaners and conditioners are also good. She's coming along, Bryce. She's coming along. So after this, the Kickstarter's over, Bryce, on Friday, I'm going to stop painting the dragon. But she'll probably come in and do cameos here and there. I'll paint little bits of her at a time when I'm in the mood. Because I don't want to sit there and paint a dragon for a month to finish her. Or more, 2 months. But as long as I don't hate her, we can come back to the dragon. We can have a dragon session every once in a while, when I feel like it. Because it'll be a long time before she comes out, as far as, is produced for the Kickstarter. Now, if you notice I'm getting a bit of a fade here, right? Where the start of my brush stroke is almost invisible, and then when I pull back and pull up, it becomes stronger. So that's because the consistency of paint that I'm using right now is very close to like what I would use for layering. That's the brush stroke that you use to get blends. Now, the other thing this tells us is that I'm not getting a full strength color when I lay this down. If it's that transparent when I start, that means that I could put a whole nother layer on with this color and kind of double down on that, bringing up that color. It lets us do blending, and instead of having to mix a whole new color, we just go over our previous one with a little bit, say, of a shorter stroke. And I'm going to actually bring these little bits together toward the bottom of these. So same color as before. I can even go up a little bit more just to reinforce the brush strokes I originally did. But I'm going to bring this color more up toward the bottom of each horn. And that makes more of a solid ridge of color there. Yes, just don't bug me about her. That's what I'm going to ask you guys. If you bug me about her, then it feels like I have to paint her, and that means I'll never get her out. Whereas if it's a surprise and I can just pull out the dragon one day and just work on it for a little while, then it's much more likely to happen. All right, so bringing in those edges, let's each of these, notice that they're not standing out as well here, but when I add that hard edge, then all the ridges start to stand out more. And that's just contrast, because we're starting with a broken line here, and when we make it a more solid line, then you can see it better. But also notice, like, I'm just barely touching this model. Like, the very teensy tip of my brush is being used, and it's hardly even, like, pressing down. And I can get away with that because I'm using thinner paint. Thinner paint's just going to come off the brush easier, especially with Master Series, because each Master Series paint has Flow Improver already added to it. So even if you're not using Flow Improver, you are when you use Master Series, because it's in the formulas. And that's what breaks the surface tension and gets the paint off your brush easier. I think, like, I would never clean multiple times a session, Shadow Spawn. I don't think it's necessary, for one thing. You should, if you're gonna clean, you could clean every day, but remember to condition. If you're using a natural hairbrush, like a sable, like, it's not, if it's a brush cleaner and conditioner, then you're okay. But if it's just a brush cleaner, then I would definitely put some hair conditioner in your brush at the end. David keeps a little travel conditioner in our painting bathroom, the bathroom right off our hobby room. He keeps just a little travel bottle of hair conditioner over there to put in his brushes after a painting session. But you should not be cleaning your brushes multiple times in a session. Like, if you're doing that, then I'd stop and question why you need to do that. Thanks, Babel. Yeah, just like that. But I do think you can overclean. Remember that when you clean, you are, like, probably impacting, like, the hairs of the brush and the glue down here, right? Like, this is glue that's holding the hairs in here. And so if you are cleaning a lot, I could see you kind of disrupting, having a chance to disrupt that. And you don't want that. You don't want it. And again, you shouldn't need to. If your brush is deforming after you clean it thoroughly, then something else is going on. And more cleaning is probably hurting it rather than helping it after that point. That's just, again, my opinion. I don't see your brush, so I can't judge. You shouldn't have to do that, though. I find, okay, let's just go out and tackle this paint myth. Guys, this is a paint myth, okay? You would have to have so much metallic flake left in your brush for it to impact a traditional paint. When you're switching from metallics to regular, you would have to have so many flakes in your water. Or you would have to get just very unlucky. And you know what? If you see a single sparkly on your dragon, you know what you do? You take opaque paint and you paint right over it. It's going to cover it up just fine. Like, I cannot even tell you the amount of time I have spent trying to debunk this myth. But you don't have to be crazy unless you're using alcohol-based metallics, and then you're going to acrylics. You do not need to be crazy about this. Just thoroughly rinse your brush, just like you would with any color, and just go. Like, you're fine. Like, unless your metallic is a weird brand that uses, like, a pseudo-acrylic where it needs its own solvent or cleaner, or you're using alcohol-based metallics. Like, what did I just paint? I just painted that whole Borka bust with shaded metallics. Like, I've never experienced this. Once I remember a tiny sparkle showing up on one of my models after I was using metallics and other paint regularly, and I just took some ordinary paint and painted right over it, and it was fine. So, don't overthink it. Like, now, if you've got a ton of metallic flake in your paint water, you may find yourself picking up more sparkles than you otherwise would. But it's time to just rinse your paint water, like, or just do what people do and use separate jars, but I've never even had to do that. Like, this is just something I've never experienced. Like, I've heard so many people tell me this, and I'm just kind of giving them that look, that dubious eyebrow look, where I'm like, I do not know if that is because what you think it is or something, right? Yes, as an example, Vallejo metal colors. Alcohol-based metallic uses aluminum flake instead of mica. Yes. A lot of us overthink things, and that's why I'm bringing this up. You are always... What I wish people would overthink is the freaking fundamentals. But we never do that. We never want to overthink, layering or, why isn't my brushstroke giving me the results I want? We always want to overthink things like metallics versus regular things. Like, we are just so weird. We humans are just so weird. Like, overthinking your basic technique, could actually make you better. But stressing about whether you have to rinse your brush after every time you use metallics is probably not too productive. Unless, as we just brought up, unless you use weird metallics. Well, then, if you really are like that and it translates over to your use of metallic stuff, then there's a simple answer. Do your metallics, then rinse out your paint water, and then clean your brushes, and then paint only not metallic stuff. Usually, honestly, when I'm doing shaded metallics... Okay, let's actually show you guys an example. One second. Let's show you an example. Hold on. Ah, dragon, sit here and smile at people. Okay, can you sit and smile at people in a nice way while I go and get this? Is your tail going to fall over? Am I going to have to prop you up? Yes. Okay, hold on a second. Let me show you an example. Let me show you two examples. One moment. What time is it anyway? Okay, we're going. Good. All right, so back up. When you are doing metallics, and that's fine, Kirst. You can do that if you want to. But the other option is, for both of these treatments, and they're done using the same techniques, I start out adding on metallics, but then I switch entirely over to regular paint with some medium and a tiny touch of metallics added in. Such a tiny touch you don't even notice it. Sometimes I don't even add in the metallics touch. I just do the paint. So you can do whatever you want to make yourself feel better. But if you are having that kind of disconnect over metallics and doing shaded metallics and having, rinsing your brush every 2 seconds, the answer is base coat with a really pale metallic and then switch completely away from metallics for a while to dirty it up, to layer on all this stuff. And you end up with an amazing result. So it's that way you can section it out for your OCD just fine. I understand this. I also have OCD about certain things. So you can totally use your metallics and then go to regular paint. And then when you come back to metallics to highlight stuff, you can concentrate just on metallics again for a while. And that's probably more productive than going back and forth between them during one painting session, endlessly back and forth and re-cleaning your brush after everything and, trying to remember which water you used with which. So yes, so that is an example of a way to do metallics. And if you're wondering, the VOD of how I started off doing this is on my YouTube. So in addition to all of the mini painting fundamentals videos, the last big long stream I posted was how to start this metallic treatment. Thank you, Quindy, for the link. 1 second while I put Borka back. So anyway, that's a way you could just work with metallics still, but, save your brush a bit. If you find that you're rinsing a lot and cleaning a lot, because that can definitely cause some damage, depending on how much a lot is. Yes, that's why it's in the other room. That's why I have to go wandering over to get it, is that it's in the other room in our nice cases, out in our main room, which is where... Because it won a trophy, it earned a spot. But yeah, so doing metallics like that is like, honestly, I think it's super fun and rewarding, and it does let you segment them like that. So your actual metallics and your regular paints never have to touch. And yes, thank you, Quindy, for the link. My YouTube, if you didn't know, I have a whole bunch of mini painting fundamentals videos that I'm adding to every month. If you're on my Patreon, you get early access to those. Patreon.com/paintingbig, as you can see from the links. But the YouTube, it's just free. You can watch it. You just have to wait a little longer. I'm going to try to start doing a little bit more on the YouTubes, but it really depends on how time goes. Probably should try to get a bunch of stuff done before the puppy shows up, because once the puppy shows up, it's all bets are off. All my extra time will go to training the puppy. So as you can see, I'm putting in that line so that then you can see how they don't. This is a little bit weirder. This is definitely looking like it's overlapping. But yeah, I've just never found with the metallics thing, I've just never found cross-contamination to really be a thing. Yeah, if it's part of the way that you just think about stuff and you want to separate the two because it's part of how your brain works, that's totally valid. But then consider really separating the techniques like I do so that you can just work on one for a while, then work on the other for a while, and spare your brush some overcleaning. And I'm sure for every me that has never had a problem with flake adhering to the model, like when using both mediums, like I'm sure there is another person who has had a ton of problems with it who would argue with me about this. So again, it's only my own experience. Take it with a grain of salt, but it definitely is my experience. That it's not as big a deal as some people make it. But that is, maybe it's just my style, my painting style. Maybe I just haven't had problems because of the way I'm doing something. No idea. There are certain painting myths that I see popping up over and over, just being regurgitated. They become part of our culture. And somebody hears one from a reputable source, and then they repeat it. And it repeats and repeats, even when, your experience may be different. Or it might not be reality at all, but it's everybody's experience, right? When it always comes down to those guys is like what works for you. I can rail about the metallics thing all I want, but if it works for you, do it. Say, Anne, you are totally wrong. I'm okay with that. I'm always willing to admit that, like, there are other things in heaven and earth. Yeah. Nope, we won't name the puppy until we get the puppy bookend kitties. I strongly believe that every animal has its own personality. And in the past, when I've tried coming up with a name for an animal before we actually see that animal's personality, it's just we've ended up naming it something completely different. So right now, our puppy mommy is ready to be bred, and she will be bred tomorrow and the next day, and then we will wait for about 5 months before they can do an ultrasound to confirm pregnancy. Then we'll be a little bit closer. Right now, the puppy is still a glint in the ether. And it is possible that the breeding won't take and we'll have to delay. Yeah. Yeah, Bryce, our puppy mommy is in heat right now, so The puppy daddy is on the other side of the country, so they are shipping semen and doing artificial insemination. And that is in transit right now, so we will find out. When we confirm pregnancy, we still won't know if we will get a puppy because I want a girl. So it is possible that all the puppies, if there are puppies, will be boys. So we really won't know until they're on the ground, as we call it. There we go. So we've got a nice ridge of bone coming up there. Now, fuzzbutt. Yeah, okay, so there is an official name for every animal that I own. And then, of course, doing that, I do Shiloh Shepherds. There's also a registered name. But all of my animals also acquire 4 to 5 different names, like Fuzzbutt or Silly Pants or, something just ridiculous. Kiri was Kiri Underfoot because she always was. Yeah, well, my family, time-honored tradition there, Babble Rouser. That's exactly my family, too. We grew up having about 16 names for each one of our pets, and unfortunately, I've carried on that tradition. Yeah. 5 weeks, Pendraig. Dog gestation is exactly 63 days. 9 weeks. So 5 weeks until we know if the doggle is pregnant. So I'm going to just really quick block in some one row of highlight on the underside here. See where that's coming in. And then we're going to do a glaze, actually. Yeah, we got time. Yeah, Dogfather. So yeah, everybody gets a bunch of names. Like Kiri was Doglet, and she was Underfoot, and she was, there are a whole bunch of names. She was Baby Dog, even though she hadn't been a baby dog for a very long time. Her daughter Blazy was Princess and Princess P, because if any dog was finicky enough to detect a lump in their bed and refuse to sleep there, it was Blazy. And also Bunny, because when she was a baby, her ears were very tall and they looked like bunny ears. And she also hopped. So yeah. So depending on the puppy's habits, and you can see that highlight coming up there. The puppy will end up with 16 different names, but yep. Fuzzbucket. A guinea pig named Fuzzbucket, huh? That's cool. But yeah, so we'll see. But this is the start of the great puppy journey, guys. So I may end up at the end of it with a puppy. So we're just bringing in a bunch of our first highlight, the russet brown plus the gnawed bone. Just bringing up a little bit of texture on the underneath of the horns here. It's a little bit more visible in person than it is on camera. Some of these bands are pretty thin, so I'm just kind of blocking them in. Not a lot of room for texture on some of these areas. There. All right, so now I want these horns to be a little bit lighter. So let's do a glaze over them. Yes, this dragon really polishes her teeth. Yep, yeah, exactly, Purple Panda Bear. They get extended names, right? All right, so let's grab a little bit of our gnawed bone color and build a glaze. A couple of brushfuls of paint. Get my mixing brush out. Chaarondar just ravages the countryside. I think her teeth are polished naturally, the old-fashioned way, by eating things. So then I have to load a bunch of water into this. A bunch of water. Like so that it's really just a puddle. See that? It's pretty good glaze consistency. It's even thinner. A glaze is even thinner than a wash. You can see it falling off the sides of the palette here and how thin it is. That's what a glaze should be. So I'm going to grab this glaze and I'm going to do this very fast. So I'm going to grab the dragon and we're going to paint it over the top. Boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. I want to keep the glaze on the top for now, mostly. Then rinse out your brush, wipe it off, come back, and you want to pull off all the excess. And when you can, pull it from a corner. But here we've got a lot of excess, so I'm actually going to grab a dry brush. The dry brush will pull up the paint a lot faster. The reason you want to pull all of this out of the cracks is that it is, it's thinner than a wash, and that means the paint is broken. It will dry in funny rings if we don't pull all the extra off. So with a very light touch, I'm just going to go and I'm going to pull gently the excess off of here. And I'm going to keep going until it really starts to dry. Be careful because you will leave brush strokes if you touch it after it starts to dry. But since I'm mostly attacking the crevices here where it hasn't started to dry, we're pretty good. All right. So now what this does is if we had put higher highlights on it, it would pull them down. But because the highlight is the same color as the glaze, it's just going to lighten up the walnut. So if you look at this color and you compare it to like this color over here, which is what it was originally, you can see that it's lightened up just a little bit. It's got a little bit of a fog over it. The glaze acts as a filter of sorts on a camera. It will gradually lighten or darken or shift an entire area. Yeah, the newts are cool. Jason does a great job of emulating like natural animal postures and movements. I think the eyeball licking is one of the cooler examples. They are neat. But yeah, we're trucking right along. If we've already we've hit that. We were 30K away this morning, I think. Nope. Purple Panda Bear, although I do mix brush on sealer into a wash to help hold it together. The glaze just has more water. And also glazes can be light, whereas washes typically are dark. Let's see. So if I grab walnut and I grab some water. I did this actually, I'll try to show you the consistency difference. That's too dark. So the reason that I do tend to put a medium in the into a wash is to hold it together and give it a certain amount of transparency. But you can build a wash just with water. It's just you've got to be a lot more careful because when you thin past a certain point, the paint will absolutely start to fall apart. I'm going to try to get this to the right consistency for you so that you can see Panda. Hold on, let me pull a bunch of this stuff off the top. So I'm looking at how the paint looks as it's falling off the side of my palette. And I use a well palette. I've gotten to use it in the habit of using it for this reason. We can still see that this is very dark on the sides here, and that means we need more water. Now we're starting to get there. Let's see here. Let me grab my base. So see how this is falling off the side of the palette now? It's not, you can see this is hardly there, right? You can see the whole palette through it pretty much. There's just this tiny shadow of color. But here, it's still pretty strong. So let me see if I've got something I can show you on. Yes. All right. So you want it to be still fairly strong so it holds together. And you could thin it a little bit more than this. Remember, the washes always dry lighter. So I've just put it over the cobbles here on Elf's base. And it looks really dark, but you can still see the cobbles are being brought out by it, right? So if you want to, one thing you can do is you can clean out your brush and you can actually kind of pull a little bit extra off of the top of some of these areas to make them a little lighter if you want. Or you can just, if you're going to go in and highlight it again, you can just let it be. But as it dries, it will dry lighter and lighter and it will bring out that texture. So there you go. There's a good picture of what it looks like. Whereas if you tried to use the consistency here and you thinned it to that, you would be throwing a bit more water into it till it was really, a glaze is just colored water. So this is me throwing a whole bunch. Notice how thin that is, how we're starting to get like really pale and see-through. This one took a long time to pale out, and now it's dry, by the way, and it shows you what it is looking like. But if we tried to use this, it would look better when it was wet, right? It looks like it's hardly affected the surface. But as it dries, it's going to turn totally invisible because you can see how it's doing that already on the side of the palette. And it also is probably going to dry with weird watermarks because it might not, because the base might kind of keep it from doing so. But at this point, I've completely broken the bonds that hold the paint together, so it is likely to dry really weird. So does that make sense, Purple? So now if you want a wash that is more transparent, then you want to use medium. Some people use mediums for glazing as well, but I don't like the texture, so I typically only use mediums for washes. And I'll usually use our Reaper brush on sealer. And what that will do is it will let me use slightly thicker paint, but by adding the medium, it'll make it look more transparent. Purple, go over to my YouTube. Search for Painting Big on YouTube, or maybe Quindy will come up with a link for us. But I just did a series of videos on this. There's really short videos called Fundamentals of Mini Painting. And how to apply a wash is number 2, and how to build your own wash, how to mix your own wash is number 3. So if you go down to my YouTube is the second from the bottom. They're pretty short videos. They're usually, those fundamentals videos are between 8 and 20 minutes long. So they're pretty quick watch. And it will talk all about washes. And it shows an example of using a liner to build a wash instead of walnut and stuff like that. So, and they're free. So I highly recommend, if you've got questions like that, the Fundamentals series is like made for that. The first one is base coating, which you'd think is simple, but if you want to get a really smooth base coat, it's not. So I'm slowly working my way through topics, and I'm just about to post the 7th one on the 1st of, or around the 1st of May. So you can kind of see here, guys. See this foggy part? So that's where the glaze got down. So you can see how it puts a mist of color over the area, right? So because it got here and I didn't really want it, I can come back in with my walnut. But that kind of shows you the foggy glaze effect that it did to bring this entire surface lighter. Yes, I also do my own, although this week we're not paint clubbing. We're going to be down in Monterey looking for places to get married. So this Saturday we are not going to be in town. But next Saturday we'll be back with stream. So I just brought a bit more walnut in to kind of break up that area down there. But yeah, our painting hobby has been likened most closely to using gouache, which is opaque watercolor. When I talk to 2D artists who have started mini painting, who are traditional artists, they almost always bring up that it's a lot like gouache. And I would say so. I mean, we're using watercolor brushes. These Kolinsky Sables, they're for watercolor. We use watercolor brushes. We thin our paints to watercolor consistencies. And we value opacity over transparency, which is pretty much gouache. So they definitely have a point there. Because although you start out just painting the model, it's when you learn to thin your paint and get some more, refined effects that you really start to see, your potential. See some really cool effects. Just bringing in some walnut to reestablish kind of that line there, the shadow line. And we're about at the end of the stream, so I'm just going to touch these guys up. Because the horn cuts back there, I do want that hard edge of shadow, even though I'm going to be bringing up kind of an under reflection, because horn is often slightly shiny. But yeah, totally recommend those fundamental series. If you have questions about washes, I'm going to be doing glazing. Glazing's not up yet because I need to do layering first, and there's other stuff. There's so many things that I want to talk about in those fundamentals videos. So we will see what I can do over the next couple months. If we really end up getting a puppy, then from this point, it's about 4 months. So I have 4 months to be productive before a puppy takes over. Before the puppy takes over my life briefly. Or, for a while. There will have to be training and socialization. Because I want my puppy to be able to be comfortable going anywhere with me, so that takes work. A little bit more highlight here. If I want to keep kind of the suggestion of an irregular edge, then I'll use dots to highlight. Instead of just putting a string of, like just a strip of color here, I'll be using an interrupted little dotting stippling method to suggest that the edge of each of these overlapping horns is rough. Alrighty. Just touch up this just a little bit and we're pretty much ready to go. Probably should give Quindy a break before she has to corral those Reaper people for a Kickstarter update. So I should probably... Oh, the puppy will have its own cam. Bookend kitties. I've got a nice space right next to me here that the puppy's going to have a crate or a pen or something so that the puppy can be in with me when I'm streaming. Because I'm going to have to see when the puppy needs to go out to use the bathroom when she's a baby, among other things. So there will be a puppy cam. Yeah, and then you guys are going to like totally be watching the puppy and not me. So I'm going to have to figure out what kind of pen I want to put over there. Because if you guys want a puppy cam, it can't be a crate. It has to be a pen. So we'll see what I can find. Maybe I can find a playpen, a tiny playpen or something. To corral a puppy. Yes, exactly. It becomes a poopy cam. But I'm pretty paranoid. I don't know. I'm a very experienced dog owner at this point, Jairus. And if I hear movement, like I'm right away going to be like, oh my God, does puppy need to go out? We'll start having some interruptions on stream for the first couple weeks, guys. Because I'll probably have to take the puppy out in the middle of the stream at least once. Sagebrush, it's just, actually it's good conditioning. The puppy needs to learn that just because I'm talking doesn't mean that I need to be interacting with her. You know, I don't always want my dog coming to bother me when I'm talking on the phone or on the whatever. So this is good practice, good training. Same thing when I used to bring my puppies to Reaper all the time. When we kept a new pup, I would bring the dog to Reaper for socialization, but also so that the puppy could practice not wanting my attention all the time. The puppy could practice, you know, being in the paint department, just kind of being there, not freaking out when I left, you know, not always like wanting attention, you know, me talking to other people and not paying attention to the dog. Like, this is great practice for all sorts of stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a pretty conscientious dog owner, and these are big dogs. So an annoying habit in a small dog becomes a very, very annoying habit in a large dog. So yeah, there'll be a lot of time, a lot of training time for the puppy. I'm looking forward to it, actually. It's been a long time, and I really enjoy puppies. So David, it'll be interesting for David because he's never raised one. So he's got a fun time coming, doesn't he? So, all right, thank you for tuning in for our dragon painting session today. We have 2 more days of dragon. I will probably, I'll do more work on just at least the main line of horns down here, and I'll lighten up this one and probably do the gold caps tomorrow. Then maybe we'll switch back to doing some neck scales for Friday. Yeah, I feel it, Steph and Mac, me too. All right. Next stream is starting in 20 minutes. So yeah, grab a snack and we'll stay live. And thank you all for coming out. And I'll see you tomorrow morning. All right. Have a great one.